It seems no matter who you mention Planet X to, or Nibiru, you are sure to get a mixed reaction. From avid followers on the subject, to a host of chronic disbelievers. Planet X will cause a shitstorm of controversial conversation every time. No matter where you stand on the subject, being informed is half the fight. So let's take a look at a few observations that to this day are still very hard to disregard as hoax. Then, we will take a look at what we know about the Planet X system as of today.
Welcome to the WTF Files. The ultimate aim of all science, to penetrate the unknown. The greatest mystery is right here, right under our feet. These are the stories that will make you say, WTF.
In October 2007, the History Channel aired a documentary entitled, The Lost Book of Nostradamus. A collection of 80 watercolor images, compiled as an illustrated codex. In one of those images, we are warned of an object that will wreak havoc on Earth, and that it will come from the constellation Ophiuchus, the 13th sign of the zodiac. Researchers and scholars alike now believe the Lost Book of Nostradamus is really talking about the same object that author Zecharia Sitchin wrote about in his book The 12th Planet, a planet known to the ancient Sumerians as Nibiru, the planet of crossing. But could there really be a connection between the ancient Sumerians and Nostradamus? In 2008, a courageous whistleblower chose to come forward, and he released images taken with the South Pole Telescope in January of the same year. They clearly show that Sitchin's Nibiru is actually a planet in orbit around a brown dwarf sun, a companion to our own host star, the Sun. So what this means is, what's coming our way is a mini constellation that we now call the Planet X system. The outermost orbital of that system is Nibiru, the planet of crossing. And it has been steadily observed from 3 different surveillance cameras in Costa Rica since 2010. On October 21, 2013, the 00 Skyview team posted a YouTube video entitled Now Seen in the Western Sky. In this video, they challenged amateur astronomers to make their own observations of Nemesis. All that was needed for the observation was a basic telescope. They made the instructions very simple, for the benefit of non-astrologists as well. They did this by using easily recognizable references to Neptune and Arcturus. They also showed us how the object is moving through the sky, and where they last observed the planet's passing. What you see here is what they observed. It provided this image so newbies could recognize what they were looking for when they found it. And here is an enhanced close-up of the object. Admittedly, it is not a delightful viewing experience, like the rings of Saturn, or finding the moons of Jupiter. In observations like this, there is a far more ominous feel about them. And rightfully so, because it is a brown dwarf star, a sister companion to our own home star, the Sun. Let's take a closer look at Nemesis. Nemesis is a brown dwarf star. It was only in the 1960s that brown dwarfs were first theorized to exist. And at that time they were called black dwarfs. Unlike our Sun, a brown dwarf lacks the mass to sustain a nuclear furnace. So they are by nature very dim, and difficult for astronomers to observe. Also they can be surrounded by what is called a dust disk, as shown in this artist illustration, which makes them even more difficult to observe. Because Nemesis has a known dust disk, it is almost impossible to see it coming. For example, if we were to imagine that we are floating in space, and Nemesis was before us, it would be dark, and surrounded by an ever-shifting dust disk. That would only make it even more difficult to observe, even when sitting right in front of it. This is why Chilean astronomer Carlos Ferrata, the man to theorize about the existence of Nemesis, called it the black star. He called it black, for a good reason. The part of the light spectrum that is visible to the human eye is a narrow band, between the 400 to 700 nanometers range. This is why the Planet X system will need to be much closer to our Sun before it is visible everywhere on the planet. In the meantime, when observed in the infrared spectrum, a brown dwarf like Nemesis will stand out like a sore thumb. Thanks to another courageous whistleblower, known as Nibiru Shock 2012, do we have infrared observations of both Nemesis and the entire Planet X system. That was taken in January 2008, with the South Pole Telescope. Called the SPT, it is located at the Edmondson Scott South Pole Station, in Antarctica. As you can see in this series of images, we are not looking at a single object, but rather a brown dwarf companion to our own Sun, with its own planets and moons, which is why we call this mini constellation the Planet X system. Also of note, in 2008, another whistleblower, known as DNIR 4808N1, leaked another observation of Nemesis, made with the SPT telescope, in May of that same year. When you put them side by side, it's clear that we have not one, but two observations of the same object, taken months apart of each other. In other words, clear confirmation of the Planet X system. Then on December 13, 2013, Richard Bolerup, of Statesville, North Carolina, personally observed and captured this image of Nibiru, after checking Richard's observation against the planet Stellarium, to verify that it was not a catalogued object, such as Venus, and that it was in the proper field of view. It turned out that in fact it was not a catalogued object, and it was also shot in the proper field of view. This placed Richard's first Nibiru observation in or near the constellation Ophiuchus, as spoken about in the Nostradamus Codex. It would seem Nostradamus truly did see, as researchers claim, an object coming from the constellation Ophiuchus. Now we shift our attention to Costa Rica, where we see images taken from the Turrialba volcano, where Planet X was captured on the camera system installed to watch for volcanic activity. If you look closely, you'll see our object of interest, the planet Nibiru, the furthest reaching planet in the Planet X system, which orbits Nemesis, the brown dwarf. The same as what was observed by the OO Skyview team in October of 2013. There seems to be a lot of confusion about Planet X and Nibiru, because most people do not understand that Nibiru, also known as Planet X, or Hercules, the Red Planet, the Destroyer, Wormwood, and many other names, is the outermost orbital of Nemesis. Therefore Nemesis and Nibiru are part of what we refer to as the Planet X system, a mini-constellation in orbit around our own Sun. According to the OO Skyview team, they observed this object on October 2013, which they showed tracking from the constellation Aquila to the constellation Ophiuchus, where interestingly enough, the Lost Book of Nostradamus tells us to look for this celestial object. Here we see the spot where the OO Skyview team observed Nemesis on October 21, 2013. Given that Nibiru is the outermost orbital of the Planet X system, this gives you a good idea of how large this mini-constellation really is. Next up is our January 23, 2014 observation of Nibiru, with the camera system installed on the Turrialba volcano in Costa Rica. We checked this Turrialba observation with Stellarium to verify that it was not a catalogued object, such as Venus, and that it was in the proper field of view. And just as expected, it was not a catalogued object, and it was in fact in the proper field of view. With this observation of Nibiru, we find it close to the center of the constellation Ophiuchus. Interestingly enough, Richard Bolerup's January 8, 2014 observation of Nibiru was actually made a few weeks earlier, and it put Nibiru very near the same spot of the observation made on January 23 from the Turrialba telescope. We also checked Richard's second observation with the Stellarium to verify that it was not a catalogued object, such as Venus, and that it was in the proper field of view. And once again, it was in fact not a catalogued object, and it was in the proper field of view. This image would have been impossible to have hoaxed, given it was observed a week before, in the exact same spot in the sky. The Turrialba telescope observed it just 1 week later, as it came into view of the camera. As we see in this last image from this dataset, captured on February 12, 2014, again from the Turrialba telescope, we see Nibiru once again in the sky. When adding this location of the observation with the other observations, it seems to indicate a distinct path of the Planet X system. What we are clearly seeing now, through this path of observations, is the suggestion of an elliptical orbit path, as indicated by Zachariah Sitchin, and coming from the same location given by Nostradamus. Is this just one hell of a coincidence? Or is there something more to this? We also would like to note that the placements on this observation sky map do not take into account how these objects are moving through the sky over time, and how they are moving in relationship to each other. So the big question: where is Nibiru now? And when will we see it with our own eyes? This seems to be the million-dollar question, with what may be a $1 million price tag, depending on the value you put on life. Since 2008, when Nibiru Shock 2012 first revealed the true nature of the beast, there have now been countless observations made of Nibiru and the Planet X system. As you can see from this most recent clear image of Nibiru, from 2018, taken from an airplane over Russia, we can see the size of the observed planet is now much larger than the 2013 observations, verifying it indeed is drawing closer to our Sun. Besides the visible observations, we now are starting to see real effects happening on planet Earth as well. It is not difficult to look out the window and realize something is happening to our weather, and our climate as well. The extreme weather phenomenon happening right now worldwide is not going to get any better anytime soon. If anything, this is just the beginning of events to come. Recent news of the magnetic field's rapid movement has raised concerns, and not just to the Planet X crowd. Concerns that Earth is about to undergo a total magnetic pole reversal, in which the north and south poles will fully swap positions, and thus wreak havoc on satellites, power lines, ocean currents, and animal migration. And not to mention, human life. Scientists have now openly claimed this could be occurring because of a rogue planet nearing our outer solar system, possibly Planet X, causing a substantial magnetic tilt to not only our home planet Earth, but to all the planets in our system. This information is only as far as a simple search on the subject, yet does not seem to be mainstream newsworthy. The last full reversal of the poles took place approximately 780,000 years ago, according to NASA. During a reversal, the magnetic field's shielding ability is weakened, which allows heightened levels of radiation to reach on and above the Earth's surface. If this were to happen today, there would be an increased risk for satellites, planes and ground-based electrical infrastructures. It's also uncertain what impact a full reversal of the magnetic poles would have on humans and other life on the planet. Since the last time this phenomenon occurred, modern humans did not yet exist. In June 2016, researchers discovered a jet stream within Earth's core, where the magnetic field is generated. According to a study on the finding, data showed intense field change at high latitude, which may be part of a longer-term variation causing the planet's magnetic features to move. A global network of ground-based observatories and orbiting satellites have also been analyzing how the magnetic field is changing, which shines more light on how the Earth's liquid core is moving, in conjunction with the magnetic shift they are observing. Scientists are showing a growing concern this recent finding may be the trigger point to the magnetic shift that is now happening, but still have no idea when the lights from the magnetic jet stream first appeared. Or they do know, and simply are not telling us. As the Planet X system draws ever closer to our Sun, all we can do is stay informed and be prepared for the worst. Remember, this passing has happened before, and humanity lived to tell about it. What may be coming may be far worse than we can even imagine. But humankind will survive and live to tell about it again.
These are the WTF Files. Subscribe today and be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Thank you for watching the WTF Files.